The last thing I said was that we're on a bridge of awakening. That all of us here have come today because we're in the process of awakening to a reality about this world that when we were young, we didn't have. Most of us were brought up in a world in which we believe that the affluence that we enjoy in Canada, whether we're First Nation people or Indigenous people or citizens of Canada, that we would be able to enjoy that affluence and that somehow the rest of the world would come along behind us and learn to enjoy this by civilizing themselves and accepting the tenets of development. Well, some of us are beginning to awaken. It will take about 20 liters of gasoline for me to come to this conference today, and I keep that in mind because what I have to say to you should at least compensate for the expenditure. I'll come back to that idea in a few minutes. I want to thank all of you for the support that you gave the Ardoch Algonquin First Nation during our struggle to preserve our homeland from uranium exploration and mining. It was a long, hard struggle. Our community is still healing from that struggle. It caused damage to our community that will be long, long lasting, perhaps generations to recover from. I say that because those Indigenous communities that do struggle to preserve their integrity, and I'm going to avoid using the word sovereignty because that's not what we were fighting for. We were really fighting for our lives, for our security, for our relationship with the land, for our responsibilities, for the instructions that the Creator gave us when placed upon that land to live there in a good way. We weren't fighting for sovereignty. Sovereignty belongs to the colonial paradigm. Jurisdiction belongs to the colonial paradigm. Those are ideas that are very foreign to the Indigenous mind. And I make that point because I think it's an important issue, or important for us to recognize that in the struggle against climate change and the struggle against colonialism. I went to the climate change conference in Cochabamba. I had sort of wanted to go to the conference in Copenhagen. I think the reasons I wanted to go to Copenhagen was to be involved and to assert my disappointment or my disagreement with globalization, because I see that that's where climate change responses are heading, is that for the most part the developed countries, those countries that are most powerful in the world, have put their energies into globalizing the climate change issue and commodifying the climate change solutions into a marketable, into marketable products. Ben talked a bit about that in the responses to global climate change. Are really about creating more technology that cuts into the and responds to the commodities market, which we're all consumers of. It was an amazing conference in Cochabamba. I'm always struck by the fact when I'm traveling in Latin America that the Indigenous people that I meet are far healthier than the Indigenous people that I know in Canada. Aboriginal people in Canada are some of the sickest people in the world. That's just a fact. And we're sick because of 250 years of colonial repression that not only repressed us physically and took our lands away from us, but robbed us of our souls. When I meet Indigenous people in Latin America, there's still very strong souls there. And that is something that, as Indigenous people, as people of Indigenous heritage in Canada, we struggle with. And I'm always struck by that. And it's reassuring to meet with Indigenous people in other places in the world who still have a soul. We did something, Nicole McGrath and I traveled together, and we combined our Spanish to get along pretty well. It was a good experience. After the conference, one of the things that we did was we took a ride. We like horses, so we rented some horses and we rode out across from La Paz, out across the ridge to the east and down into a small valley which is underneath a glacial mountain, which is now known as the man who is losing his poncho. It was a neat place, and one of the things we realized is that even the horses that we brought into this valley were an energy expenditure that the people that lived there couldn't afford. They farmed without machinery. They farmed by hand. They cut their wheat and their oats with their hands south. The beasts of burden that they used were burros, not horses, because horses were far too expensive to purchase, but also to maintain in that particular environment. So we were a bit of a novelty. The kids really liked seeing the horses, but it also brought that fact to me that, you know, even riding on hoof can be an expenditure of energy that's far greater than what the environment will allow. We also recognize that the people who lived in that small valley depended upon the springs that came out of the hillsides. The hydrostatic pressure from the glaciers pressed down into the mountain, forced water down into the water, the hydrostatic water table, and pushed out water into those little springs that popped up here and there, which the people took advantage of. In the next 10 years, those will be gone. Those springs will be dry. They'll be dry because the glacier is evaporating. It's not even shedding, no longer even shedding water when it melts. In fact, it doesn't melt, it simply evaporates. Global warming is moving so fast in that part of the world that those people we saw tending their small sheep, their pigs, and their burros will be gone. They'll have to move into La Paz, and they'll be moving into away from an area that is completely supporting for them. To me, that's something that we will not see in Ontario. In fact, in Ontario, we'll probably be beneficiaries of climate change. The weather will be better, it will get warmer. Places in northern Ontario will be open to agriculture, although there is a limit to the topsoil. As you go north, you see that the forest, the boreal forest, rests upon sand and gravel, but they don't support a topsoil level that can be converted to agriculture. But we will experience also the economy of Ontario, which is a capitalist economy, will also benefit from the fact that those people will be moving out of their valley, because one of the things that costs money in terms of production in mining is that you have to remove people from their homelands. Global warming is doing that for us. One of the things that's important in understanding about climate justice is that countries like Bolivia, people like Evo Morales, and many people who work with him, and many other people in the world who understand how the environments work, who understand the political system, are working toward climate justice. And climate justice for them means that the developing nations have to mitigate the damage that they've caused. That colonialism has not only enslaved people in terms of labor and in terms of removing them from their land, but it's also polluted their environments. That those countries that have benefited from the degradation of our climate, need to mitigate the damage. They need to and where they can't mitigate the damage, where they can't repair it, they need to compensate people so that people can at least have a period of grace to adapt and to change their occupations or their livelihoods. And thirdly, climate justice means to liberate. It means to control the excesses of colonialism, to liberate ordinary folks from the devastation of externalizing the costs of colonialism onto the environment and onto the backs of common ordinary people. However, what happened in Copenhagen is that the capitalist countries have come together, the capitalist colonial countries have come together at the heat of those in control, and they've said that no, the solution to climate justice, the solution to the climate change problem is adaptation, which basically means to commodify the solutions. It means to have a carbon tax, it means to have carbon trading, it means even to purchase large areas of indigenous land in the Amazon so that corporations can own that and protect it. It means we can sell our Canadian North, as the Boreal Forest Agreement just has, to corporations. We're struggling, and I look at my community. I began by thanking you for the help and recognizing that our community is suffered. I didn't want to come and talk about the nightmares, the horrors of that Indigenous people have had to face in the world. I really wanted to talk about solutions. But I also know this, is that we are fighting a losing battle. That globalization is really bringing forth a neo-feudalism. That your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, in all likelihood, will live under an economic feudal system. What can you do about it? Well, probably next to nothing. When the militaries come back from Iraq and Iran, they will come back as privatized armies. They will be owned by the corporations who have supported them. The shock and awe that you saw this summer in Toronto is a mild dream compared to the nightmare that's waiting for us. So what are the solutions? Every soul who is born into this universe, if there's any right, has the right to an Indigenous existence, to a close association and responsibility for the beauty of this creation. You have the right to live free or die. You have the right to stand up and tell your children that if they love you, and that if you love them, you will fight to preserve the indigeneity of your soul. Some of my friends, First Nation friends, my Indian friends, tell me that no, we can't offer indigeneity to non-Indian people. You know, they came here from someplace else. Well, that may be true. But the fact is, if we're going to change this world, we need to change ourselves. We need to recognize that in our hearts and in our souls, we are Indigenous people, every single one of us. And we have a responsibility to this planet, and that we are willing to live or die to preserve the freedom. Women need, my elder talked about the water. Women need to free their wombs from the imposition of colonialism. As men, we need to free our arms, our hands, our feet, our whole bodies, our whole selves from the imposition of colonialism. when our leaders stand up, as they did this week with Bill 300, and say, well, I support Bill 300 in principle, but I can't support it with a vote, or I can't support it by, voting at all. Tell them to go to hell. You have the right to live as Indigenous people. And I guess that's where I want to stop. And if we're going to do anything about climate change, we've got to recognize that the land owns us. John Locke said, modern man cannot allow the environment to control them. They have to control the environment. All the words goes.